Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jams and Tea Podcast Record Club, where we review a new recommended record from one of the five of us every single week. And this week we are talking about Morgan's recommended record. Morgan, why don't you tell us a little bit about Counterparts and their album, Nothing Left to Love? Is he frozen?
I think if not, he's doing
I cannot tell.
If he's not, he's doing a great job of holding that expression.
My fucking internet be on the fritz lang. Anyway,
Morgan, why don't you tell us about Counterparts and what their album is and why we're talking about them today?
so pianos become the teeth to nothing left long after. So Counterparts is a metalcore, melodic, hardcore group. And in 2019, they released their most recent effort called Nothing Left to Love. I discovered this album by burping. I discovered this album on the charts of Sputnik Music, where stuff like this tends to do very well. Listen to it, just only aware that it was metalcore of some variety. And then I heard it, and then I was like, motherfucking, wow.
Damn, I'm sad.
Yeah. But like, I could also like, I could fight a man. I could fight a man right now.
I could stab a man in a bar.
Partially why I recommended this record was just to get everybody to listen to it. And the other reason is because it's great and sort of under discussed.
I didn't just listen to this like just for this. I heard this actually like 2 or so months ago when I was going through. I might have been between when I went through Converge and when I went through Dillinger, and Morgan just like shouted this out and be like, hey, you need to fucking listen to this. And then I think me listening to it was actually what made you be like, I made it a fucking record club because fuck you. But yeah, I listened to this
Probably
beforehand,
exactly
and
like
I'm
that too.
probably. I mean, it sounds like you when recommending an album, which I mean, yeah, do that. You
Listen
make
to
me
it,
because
cracker.
I mean, look, I'm bad at listening to things sometimes, so I need an extra shove. And if you're going to call me a cracker, then well, I mean,
I think you are in fact very good at listening to things.
It's all relative. But I listened to it then, and I was a big fan, and I was like, damn, man, this shit goes. And so I listened to one of their earlier albums before this. I thought it was very good instrumentally. I had this to compare it to lyrically, of which that album fell a little bit short, even though I still think that album is good. But this most recent couple of listens merely reaffirmed my opinion beforehand, in that I be getting into metalcore. I be liking metalcore. This is good metalcore. I think the mentioning that it's sort of the subgenre of melodic metalcore, as Morgan said, is very important because that is one of the strongest variant elements here is a sense of melody. Is that a lot of the time, metalcore being one of those, core genres, it's a very fundamentals, very basic, and often very abrasive, and can even just sort of venture on being something that's a little bit like a musical and how it just kind of grates against your normal listening sensibilities. That's what core is. It's getting a genre down to like the barest of essentials and accentuating them as far as they can go. But keeping the melody intact here is part of why I think this is made so special. One of my favorite things about this album is just pretty much how it sounds. If you're the type of person that likes a dirtier, kind of edgier sound to your metalcore, don't look here. This is pretty clean, all things considered. That said, as somebody who likes shit like The Dusk in Us, I do be liking some cleanly produced shit if it goes hard enough. And thankfully, this goes hard enough. One of the best things about this is just the guitar tones and how forward moving and propulsive they are. They're just like shit fucking rocks my nuts, and I love it every single time. It's just like it's the sound I want from music, exactly like this. It's perfectly designed too, in the sense that it's like just a little bit over 30 odd minutes. And it doesn't exactly vary itself up a whole lot. It has some songs that are a little bit slower, like the title slash closing track, where it's a little bit more measured, which the record is not a complete stranger to. It has a bit of an emo tinge also, both lyrically, stylistically, which is very present, and I think combines with the melodic sound of it very, very well. It makes it very, I guess, palatable, even for something that's as heavy as this. And I was able to more easily process it. The vocals are very present. A lot of the time, vocals in this genre are kind of wallpaper. They're just kind of something that you don't necessarily need to pay attention to, or secondary, or you may not even hear them at all. We talked about the fucking Panopticon album, and those albums don't have lyrics released, and you can barely hear half of that shit. So it's definitely a present choice to be able to do that. And I think that the standout thing that I really, really like about this album is, in fact, the writing. I find it to be a very delicate balance between incredibly elegantly poetic and like just insanely prosaic, and also just really, really authentic. I can see how it maybe wouldn't hit for people who don't generally like the things that make this album different, like emo, or like the sort of more melodic entries in this genre. Like, if you don't fuck with shit like Kill Switch Engage, I guess generally this ain't gonna be your cup of tea. But I just really love how I think I once described it as being like a lot of the writing here reminds me of like Edgar Allan Poe, in the sense that it's like some of it's just downright gothic. I mean, it sounds like if The Cure made a fucking metalcore album, and that's kind of why I like it. It's very, very, very dark. It deals in a lot of really heavy subject matter, as the cover kind of alludes to. Covers some stuff with like self-harm, isolation, sort of the idea of nothing left to love. That intro track, just asking that question of just sort of this is directed at maybe a love interest, former love interest, lost love kind of thing. But the thing I like about it, other than just the prose, is actually the maturity with which it is handled. Is that is very, very self-critical in how it analyzes how it feels about the characters in the situations that it talks about. I find it to be very nuanced, and you never get a sense of like, that's kind of my problem with the previous record that I listened to, is that it was a little too like mawkish. It was a little bit too like juvenile, and like I understand that has its place. I like lots of records like that. You got to have your deja entendu to your devil and God are raging inside me. But that said, I think the difference is night and day. And yeah, I just think this shit kind of goes. It's really, really enjoyable. If you like this kind of music, it's probably going to be for you. But yeah, I'm more or less in the same camp as Morgan, of being pretty over the moon about everything about this album. I like it a lot, a fucking lot.
I mean, I think it's solid. I like it quite a bit. Probably not quite at the level of the two of you, but I want to say that in a measured way, because even though I don't have it as a higher rating as you two do, I don't really have any outright criticisms of this record. Like, I don't think there's any missteps that this album makes at all. I think it's very solid. Some of the songs on here have great intensity to them, especially in terms of the emotional quality to the singing and the lyricism. As you say, Jake, it's very poetic, and it's very kind of quite typical lyricism of this particular style. It vacillates between really direct sentiments like, no one could save me, I was born inside my grave on Paradise and Plague, and then the will you love me if when there's nothing left to love on the title track, and also the more I guess literate or less kind of direct stuff, like in Wings of Nightmares, lines like, I'm clinging to the wings of nightmares, detaching every finger one by one, shaken awake to find her absence hasn't manifested yet. It's very like post-hardcore poetic style that a lot of the artists in the scene go for. I will say I don't know necessarily that the writing on this record maybe distinguishes itself from other bands that are, you know, either of this ilk or, you know, relative to it. Like even though they're not quite the same, they're much more post-hardcore. I keep thinking a lot of Touche Amore while listening to like early
Yeah.
Touche Amore while listening to this record, and I think there's a little more intimacy in Jeremy Baum's writing than there is in this writing, and that's more personal preference than anything. But it is like a certain extent to which I found it a little difficult to get as involved with this album as I would have liked. But that said, it is a ripper. One of my favorite tracks on here is the track Separate Wounds, which goes just incredibly hard. I love the vocal tonalities on this track. I love some of the really just direct and kind of striking and visually dark lyrical references to like removing skin and nerve endings and like body parts. It's all very kind of like biological, and obviously the title as well. Like it all very much conjures a sense of like mental brokenness reflected in kind of like physical decay, and it's very, very effective. And it's instrumentally excellent as well. It's one of the really punchiest and most focused pieces, and one of the ones that definitely stands out the most when I listen to it. Another track in that regard that I love as well is the song Cherished. There's a real directness to this that is almost a contrast to some of the more lyrical, poetic abstractions of other songs. This is a song that really kind of front and center is really confronting in the way that it's written. I am the dagger, I will drive into my heart. Nothing will stay. The weight of insecurity becomes too much to bear. Losing sight as I steer into a razor to be rewarded. Collections of my flaws is a very, very dark and very quite stunning way of describing self-harm or like suicide. To be rewarded collections of my flaws as you it's quite intense and difficult to process, but in the best way possible as you kind of want to get out of music like this. That actually is really one thing I think that struck me the most listening to this record over and over again, is just how overwhelmingly dark it is. Not just in the sense that, you know, this is you know, metalcore and it's all very oppressive and dark and lonesome and stuff, but there's a real sense of just grueling pain in this that I think is integral to a lot of its greatest moments. And yeah, overall, I enjoyed the record quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that sort of one could describe it as melodramatic. Like, so I think of the chorus to Wings of Nightmares. Keep your distance from the flowers that will decorate my corpse, undeserving of a chance to watch them thrive. Remove the sickness before it has a chance to run its course. I never knew we'd make it out. I knew we'd never make it out alive. And, you know, very tears in my diary kind of thing. But a couple things that make this that are so integral to what it really is. I think the prose itself is way better and like obviously way more well read than most of the Tears in My Diary emo influenced metalcore stuff you'll find out there. And for another, the sheer conviction with which it is performed by vocalist Brendan Murphy, who is just an absolute emotional fucking powerhouse on this record, all over it. The way that it's delivered, like you feel it, or at least I do, like deep in my bones when it's like it just appeals to like when you've felt the absolute lowest that you ever felt, and this sort of melodramatic, if you want to call it that, sort of flavor really sounds like how you feel.
Mm. Yeah.
And embracing that emotional tenor completely, fully, completely committing to that throughout the entire album it makes something really, really effective within its genre.
I think what separates records that in this vein that work and don't, I mean, for me anyway, and by this vein, I mean this metalcore with emo style lyricism, but also like distinctly metal lyrics. This very particular style of writing and music. I think what makes separates the good shit from the bad shit is that if you're gonna write with this level of melodramatic intensity, the music needs to complement that. And so a lot of
Yep.
the lesser bands in this regard, none of which I'm going to name, don't necessarily find that balance, and as a result, you really have nothing to latch onto except for how overwrought the writing is. And there's certainly points in this record where I would describe the writing as a little bit overwrought, but it works by and large because the band bring the ferocity and the chaotic wildness necessary to complement that. And that ultimately is why I come down on a more positive side than a more negative side with this record, even though I don't love it. I respect and I'm glad and I'm find it refreshing to get that level of intensity. Yeah, it's exactly what a record like your meat and potatoes metalcore record like this should be. It's the very basics, and this record does those very well.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting just how good the playing is. I've already talked about the Brennan Murphy as a vocalist, but everyone on this album is putting in serious instrumental work, particularly like in the lead guitar parts, which just basically never stop. Like even sometimes in a breakdown where it's just fucking open string chugging, the dude will find his way up the fretboard again. And it's exactly what you said about it matching the emotional tenor of the lyrics. It has to match that intensity and overwroughtness with the music, and it certainly fucking does here.
I guess I'm approaching this as someone who doesn't really care for metalcore a lot. It's not really a preferred subgenre of hardcore punk or metal for me. Uh, really, I think I take a lot of Tyler's comments about the emotional overwroughtness of this and that ilk, and it honestly affects me in a bit more of an extreme way, obviously, because I find a lot of it a little unbearable, quite frankly. I mean, and that's not to discount the ferociousness and the blistering intensity of the guitar performances. I think I like those pretty consistently throughout. That's what's compelling to me, and I really enjoy the passion the band puts into those instrumentals, and that's why it doesn't veer into the realm of being something I find absolutely unbearable, because to me it's quite clear the people making this give a shit about the final product, and more power to them. But I really just couldn't get into a lot of the vocals of this, the writing of it. Like, I think past track 5, Spectral Wounds, I found myself really burnt out, even though the album was so short. Yeah, I just couldn't get into it at all, quite frankly.
It's not all that surprising necessarily because
That's
hard
fair.
hard hardcore music like this, metalcore. I mean, this is like a real like deep end record, which is not to say it's one of the most sophisticated or whatever, but it is like a record that doesn't really allow you an easy in. I think, to be fair, it's a
No.
record that you are either able to leap onto the very whirlwind mixture of all of these extreme things in terms of like extreme sound and extreme lyricism and extreme emotion, or it's like all the speeding merry-go-round is going too fast by you for you to grab onto it.
And I guess it's also that there's just other ways the same effect is achieved that I just prefer more, and different avenues of punk and metal that achieve that same effect for me in just a way I personally find more compelling and interesting in that respect.
You know, it's probably a lot of what I have in common with one of the records I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast this week, which is Between the Buried and Me's Alaska, where basically Tyler's description of that problem of just being able to fail to like latch onto something because it's such an impenetrable whirlwind is just like, I can recognize that a lot of it is very good and technically proficient. It's just that once it kind of comes on, it just whoosh. So that makes sense to me.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean it's a good meat and potatoes record, and August, we've fed August so well that he is expecting a Thanksgiving turkey, and not a shepherd's pie. So that's.
I thought you were headed in a more pun-oriented direction there, and I was really worried there for a second because I was just like, "This is really labored. I don't know where this is
I don't
going."
know where this is
Who the
going.
fuck do you think I am?
I don't know, Tyler.
No. Yeah, really solid. Like I said.
Yeah, August, I think, is if you have an avenue of metalcore, it's definitely the Between the Buried and Me kind, where it's like tinged with progressive elements and things that you generally like.
And I was gonna say, I was actually gonna bring that up because I did have that realization where I was like, well, Between the Buried and Me is metalcore, but yeah, it's that blending with other styles I find more compelling that probably really sells it for me in that case.
Yeah. You wanna you have a what's that thing? What's that thing about fuck. Oh, I hate when I have a perfect reference but then I fuck it up because I can't remember it properly. You
ever like then you do the
Have you ever had a dream where you never could and then you and then you when you
you don't understand, like you want a fucking porterhouse and
oh god, and it's fucking this is a like a ribeye or whatever the fuck. It's just like this is a fucking McBurger, whatever the fuck those things are called.
You want a fucking ribeye and this is a porterhouse and yeah, it's stupid. It was dumb.
I think that's the same thing.
It was dumb. It was dumb.
What in God's holy name are you blathering about?
I love Morgan how as you yelled that the whole camera shook and the room was shaking with you.
I shook the table a little bit.
I am the table.
Oh, so funny. All right, let's move on.
I was gonna hang myself with my headphones real quick.
It really was. I'm gonna hang myself.
About to do a Sayori up in here.
No.
I have to joke about it or I'll die.
Another part of the reason that I recommended this album is because it's a very specific brand of metalcore that we very rarely get to talk about on the show, and in fact, I don't think we ever have. And maybe some of us were not so familiar with this particular brand of metalcore, and didn't work out for some of us. That's fine. That's gonna happen when you throw something new at people. Sometimes some shit ain't going.
Core shit.
Yeah. I myself, as you may have guessed, love this album a lot. I just get yeah. So
I first
I first heard it when it came out, as I said, and I loved it then, but it didn't. It took a while to really stick on me, and in fact, it took a pandemic for it to really stick on me. Uh, because it was in the midst of last year when I think Wings of Nightmares came on shuffle uh one time, and I was just like, ah shit, I gotta go back to this. Cause like this fucking goes, and I needed something that would like get my adrenaline going every now and then amidst quarantine. And then I listened to it like really deeply and intently, and read into the lyrics, and was just like, ah shit, this one's sad too. Damn it. But like, fuck yeah. Um
Fuck yeah, crying.
it's yeah, it's just like it almost lyrically and in terms of atmosphere, I think more even more so than lyrically, it reminds me of stuff like, you know, your devil and God raging inside of me, your lack long afters even. Uh, it hurts, and it describes a kind of hurt that really it's very over the top and aggressive in the way that it's describing what it's describing, but it's also like when you're in those moments, it feels true. And um, for something to as yeah, there are a lot of bands that are like this. You know, your of mice and men's, your fucking like, dare I say, Black Veil Brides, who do things similar to this, but uh you know, suck.
They're not.
Um
They are inferior purely by virtue of not being named after a Rush album.
oh yeah, okay, yeah, okay. All right, bro.
I have never heard this
Fucking-
podcast be more silent than in those 4 seconds.
Fuck, what do you
Morgan in his head, like,
fucking-
farewell to kings, permanent waves, hemispheres.
I was like, what fucking, there's not a Rush album named Black Veil Brides. The hell are you talking about?
Not what I said.
No, it isn't. No,
My
it
favorite metalcore band, Neil Peart.
isn't. It's just, I feel like my emotional reaction to that was akin to the part in The Big Lebowski where he's just like, what are you, a fucking park ranger now? It's like, what? Like, obviously Park Ranger doesn't fit that, but it's just like, what are you, fucking
What are we, some kind of
clown
Black
now?
Veil Bride?
Particularly on songs like the aforementioned Wings of Nightmares, and my absolute favorite here, Separate Wounds, which perfectly marry the lyrical material and the atmosphere of the music itself. They're just in perfect harmony, and it is beautiful and a little bit scary to sort of look into the fucking the void in the way that some of those songs do.
The void. Fuck!
Fucking Gaspar, is that you? Are you from the war?
It was backwash reference, actually, but a deep cut one from
Oh,
last year.
I could fucking hear you all the way. All I heard was
Oh,
the void.
no,
so I
please,
just...
God, help me.
Yeah,
Okay.
same energy.
We're gonna be resetting soon. Don't you worry at home, folks.
We're going to factory reset our own brains.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of this
Tyler,
shit is sticking in.
I legitimately mean this. Are you fucking okay, dude? That was terrifying.
No, I leaned into it. Don't worry. I'm fine.
I don't even know what he
You look
said
like
there.
the
That
cover of
makes me
some
more
rap
nervous.
songs.
That'll be a
It's
treat
like-
for anyone who watches back the video.
Yeah.
Look,
I,
we
for
s-
one, am not okay.
Yeah, I know I'm not okay
I'm sorry, man.
either.
Yeah.
Look,
We're here. We're queer. Fucking
Yep.
suck a dick about it.
And we
Steers
will.
and queers, steers and queers.
I don't know. They stack shit that high in Texas.
all right.
We have to talk about OK Computer.
They
That's
sure
not-
don't look like a steer.
That's not
So
happening.
that pretty much.
in this video. Favorite
August
tracks?
visibly not amused.
Fair enough. It's not amusing. It's tragic.
Favorite.
Favorite.
I mean, he's watching.
fa-
We have fun here.
favorite tracks and ratings for Counterparts. There's nothing left to love. My 3 favorite tracks on this album are Wings of Nightmares, Separate Wounds, and Cherished. My least favorite track, I didn't mention it, but I actually don't especially care for the title track, and it's for one very specific reason that's kind of my fault, actually, and I'll own it up. Because I'm an idiot, I misread the title of this album as Nothing Left to Lose. Whatever, I'm stupid. And I listened to this, and I listened to the album, and I got to that closing track, and it was that refrain over and over again of "Will you love me when there's nothing left to love?" But I misheard it as "Will you love me when there's nothing left to lose?" And I'm like, "Fuck, that's an amazing lyric." And then I read the lyrics and I realized I'd fucked it up, and it was "Will you love me when there's nothing left to love?" which is not a bad lyric, but I don't like it as much as I liked the imaginary lyric that I imagined in my head. So,
Hate that I've done that before. That shit sucks.
but anyway, it's still a good album, and I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10.
My 3 favorites are Separate Wounds, Wings of Nightmares, and it could be fucking any of them, but I will say Imprints. No least favorite in a theme that we are having this week, apparently. And this is, in fact, a 10. Morgan recommend an album for Record Club that he does not give a 10 to challenge.
You won't, you're scared.
You watch
All
out,
right.
motherfucker. I'm gonna recommend Slipknot's Iowa for the next
You
for the
probably
next
will.
one. You watch it.
All right.
No, it's on me.
Favorite tracks is Chinese Satellite. Least favorite is Paradise and Plague. I give it a 4 out of 10.
And
My 3 favorite tracks. I really got to go with the 1, 2, 3 punch of Wings of Nightmares, Paradise and Plague, and The Hands That Used to Hold Me. I think that's the best run of songs on the record. Least favorite track. I suppose Your Own Knife. Song I like, just not quite as much as the others. And I give it a 9.
Comes out to a 7.6 out of 10.
Let us know.
Tyler be like, I wish this was a hell of a ween.
Shut up. Let us know in the comments below what you think of this album and Counterparts in general. Are there other records in the discography that you particularly ride for that we should check out, or the ones of us who haven't heard them anyway? Words, what do they mean? I'm going to kill myself. Leave us comments, like and subscribe.
All right. As always, folks, rock over London, rock on Chicago, Wendy's nuts smack you in the face.